Okay, we're almost ready. One sec. All right. Hello. Hello. Okay. Hello, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about why we do not have a body positivity movement. Not really, not yet. And we're going to be talking about, why that is the case, why I am saying we don't have a body positivity movement right now, and what it would take to actually create a body positivity movement. Okay, so before I start, I want to say that another YouTube creator called Mickey Atkins just put out a really long video on this. So if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching the replay on Instagram, I've put the link in the description. I highly recommend that you go watch her video because she goes into a lot of what I'm going to talk about today in great detail, and she's got a really good list of sources that you can look at for looking at the evidence about why this whole body positivity movement isn't a thing that we actually have right now and what it would actually take to create one. So I just want to start off by saying that her video is really in depth, it's really good. And there are definitely some things in there that I think are really important for us to understand about how this whole system works, for us to be able to understand why we don't have a body positivity movement yet, okay? So before we get into all the nitty-gritty details, I want to say that if we understand what a true body positivity movement would actually be, which is what we're going to talk about right here, right now, we would be able to see why we don't have that yet, okay? So the big thing that we tend to be missing in our current body positivity movement is the idea that body positivity in its inception was supposed to be about body liberation, okay? In the sense that we need to realize that we still live in a system, we still live in cultures, we still live in a world where it is physically, mentally, and emotionally unsafe to occupy certain body types. Okay? That is the problem. It's not about, it's not to say that it's not about these things, but it's to say that when we make it all about being able to have like rolls of fat on your stomach and not hate yourself, when we make it all about having those little flaws that make us not look like supermodels and loving ourselves anyways, when we make it all about, right, like the Dove campaign of every woman gets to wear a pair of underwear, we are missing the point, okay? Because it's not to say that people who do not feel good in their bodies, who have been shamed, because we all have, okay? This is the reality, and this is where the compassion comes in, and this is where I can say, learning to love our bodies for how our bodies look, even when we fit pretty closely into the societal standards of what a body is supposed to look like, that being a part of the body positivity movement, and understanding that we've all been shamed for how our bodies look, and we've all been trained to be in a war against our bodies, and that all of us deserve to be able to be in our body and to feel good about it. We can understand that, and we can hold that, and we can make that a part of the body positivity movement we are trying to create, while not missing the bigger, larger picture that in our culture and in our society, we still live in a world, like I said, where it is normal. It's not just okay. It's not just whatever. It's normal for us to say that people who exist in certain body types don't deserve the same respect, the same safety, the same opportunities, the same provisions, the same access as people who occupy other bodies. That is the main problem. Okay? So the real body positivity movement was started by people who occupy bodies that in our culture have systemically been prejudiced against. So it's not that they're just judged and people don't like them. It's not that they're just receiving the message that they're not attractive and they're not pretty. It's that by occupying a certain body, they are literally judged as less than human, as less deserving of healthcare, less deserving of safety, less deserving of opportunity to work their way up in the system and have money and have provision, of like that are literally seen as people that we can automatically assume are unintelligent, are lazy, are sinful, or giving into their fleshly desires at all times. And this started with its roots in racism and ableism. Okay? So when we are talking about a true body positivity movement, we are talking about the liberation of people of color, of people who are disabled, of people who are chronically ill, from a system that systemically puts people like that in a position where they don't have access to what they need to function successfully in our system. And that is not just something that is okay, it is normal. It is something that we are socially conditioned to be seen as the right thing. Okay? So, for instance, we can look around our society right now and understand that how we are all indoctrinated to see people who occupy bodies that are large, obese, fat, whatever you want to call it, that we are literally conditioned to automatically judge that person as making bad choices, as a thin person who is simply giving in to their slothful, lazy, uneducated, humanly desire to just be gluttonous and overweight, and that it is okay to judge that person as just putting themselves in that situation for no reason. And that we are trained to fear that we could become that one day because of how badly society treats people in bodies like that. Again, if we take a step back and we look at, like, literally, let's just look at what's happening with Ozempic right now. Right? Ozempic, the weight loss drug. Almost every celebrity, from the celebrities that have been historically overweight to the celebrities that are normal size who want to be thinner, are like taking this drug that was designed for people who have diabetes that causes a severe decrease in your desire to eat because they want so badly to fit into the societal box of what it is to be a good person. Okay? This goes beyond just wanting to be attractive and wanting to be accepted for how we look in our bodies. We have an entire culture built around the idea that who you are as a person, what your character is like, and therefore what you deserve in terms of provision, access, and safety can be measured and weighed by your capacity to fit your body into a straight size ideal. And we have hundreds of thousands of people who are taking this drug that is not designed just to help you lose weight. It is designed for people who have out of control diabetes, who are harming their health by taking this drug. And it's like this desperate thing that people are doing. Even people, like I say, who are celebrities, who have massive power in our system, are still doing this. Because, like I said, it's so ingrained in us that to be thin is to be a good person, that to be thin is to be deserving of access, of the things that make us safe and the things that give us the capacity to have a good life. That is totally not okay. We still live in a world where people who are disabled, people who are chronically ill, are kept out of what little healthcare systems we have in the Western world because they're a liability. We still live in a world where people who are disabled and people who are chronically ill are seen as drains on society. Because the one thing our society teaches us to value is someone's capacity to be productive in the workforce. So if you're chronically ill, or if you are disabled in some way, again, it is societally accepted that we look down on you, that we say there's something wrong with you, you are less valuable than the rest of the people on the planet. If you have mental illness, you are literally less valuable. And therefore, you are going to have a harder time providing for yourself, having access to safety, having access to the things that you need to survive. Because you can't be as productive in the system as people who are not ill or disabled or mentally ill. And that is seen as okay. That is seen as normal. Do we see what we're looking at here? This is what the problem is. This is where the problem lies. We are taught from the very beginning to see fatness, to see disability, to see chronic illness, and to see mental illness as a reason why someone is less deserving of care, access, and safety than everybody else. And then we are deeply indoctrinated in our culture of hyper-individualism to look at these people and say, you are in this situation because of yourself. Okay? I can speak to this from personal experience. If you don't know, I have been chronically ill my entire life. I literally just got diagnosed with something, with a superior mesenteric artery syndrome. I had surgery for it a month ago. It is something that I have had for my entire life, that I was gaslit about medically for 35 years. And so much of my life, I have been working twice as hard as everybody else to function, to take care of myself, because my organs didn't work. This was the bottom line. I had to manually do things that other people's bodies just naturally do. I have naturally less energy than everybody else. I have naturally no capacity to be in control of my body weight or control of how I look. And I have been publicly shamed, blamed, and guilted for the last 10 years of being on the internet. I have been shamed, blamed, and guilted by my family, shamed, blamed, and guilted by medical professionals, judged as weak, lazy, just having an eating disorder, because I was not able to look how I was supposed to look. I was productive as fuck. I've always been very productive. But the bottom line is, it was completely reasonable to hundreds of people to criticize me, to judge me, to shame me, to blame me, to assume that I was just not taking responsibility for myself, to assume that I could be in a state of perfect health and look the way that culture says health looks right now, which again is a construct, which we'll talk about in a second, and that I just wasn't. And that was 35 years of my life. You could be perfectly healthy. You could be perfectly productive. You could fit perfectly into beauty standards. And the reason you don't is because you are mentally unstable. You are lying to everyone about self-love. You are irresponsible. You're not taking responsibility for yourself. And I know that just by looking at you. If you occupy a big body, it is completely reasonable that people are going to come up to you and be like, you're going to have a heart attack. You're unhealthy. You're making bad choices. I highly recommend you read anything written by Aubrey Gordon, where she talks about her experience of being an obese person in our world. If you don't know what it's like to occupy a larger body. Because just the social ridicule alone that is normalized makes people mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically sometimes unsafe in our culture. And that is normalized, that we have made that okay. Rather than us being people who are like, that is barbaric and we should want to change it, we literally have created systems where we're just so afraid that we might become that we are so indoctrinated to be in a state of constantly trying to control and police and be in control of our own bodies, instead of saying, no, this system needs to change. We need to stop being so shitty to people who don't occupy straight-sized bodies that are productive and completely capable and have no problems. That is the problem. The fact that we live in a world where it is okay to be mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically abusive towards people who don't fit our narrative of what healthy looks like is the big part of the problem. And the next thing is we have to start to look at where these things came from. Okay, so again, historically, literally during the slave trade, when people were displacing, literally robbing people from Africa and bringing them to the Western world to be slaves, we started to be confronted with different body types, more voluptuous body types. And there was no regard, there was no research into, there was no looking into the actual health status of these African people who occupy different looking bodies than the Western body type. And rather, it was these voluptuous people are inherently less intelligent, sinful, gluttonous, lazy, and that is why they look that way. They have bodies that are different than our European bodies. And that means that they are these things. And we still believe that to this day. That is still the cultural narrative. That's where that came from. Racism. We still live in a world right now where our insurance companies, money is the reason that the diet industry is still so incredibly, profoundly taking over our world. Insurance companies adopted the BMI, which is junk science. Go look into that. Go look into the invention of the BMI, where we came up with our standards for what creates someone to be obese or not. And you are going to find that the person who invented that did not do a good job of actually looking at health outcomes and their correlation to body weight. And yet it became the standard practice of how we judge whether someone is healthy or not. And this is how insurance companies came up with their little scheme of who they will and who they will not cover. And that is for their own profit. The government and insurance companies are also in bed with pharmaceutical companies and weight loss companies. So everybody plays, everybody wins financially. So long as people are going to Weight Watchers, so long as people are on Ozempic, insurance companies, weight loss companies, and pharmaceutical companies are all making money. And that is why the fear of God has been placed in us around being obese. What is and isn't labeled as obese is arbitrary. Okay? It used to be that the BMI, which is junk anyways, you had to be 27 or higher to be obese. They lowered it in the 80s to 25. Arbitrarily. Based off nothing. Based off no, oh, we're realizing everyone from 25 to 27 is having a heart attack. And so it's dangerous to be in that range. They literally just rounded it down so that more people would be in the obese category. Overnight. So now we can have an even harder war on obesity. Make people even more afraid of it. So that they will invest in these weight loss companies, invest in dieting, invest in all this stuff, which profits the industry, which profits insurance companies. That's where that came from. And we live in a world now where if you are obese or if you are underweight, if you don't fit in the middle, you go to the doctor, they're not going to take you seriously. They're not going to look at you. They're not going to do their due diligence. They're not going to test you properly. They're going to say you need to lose weight or you need to gain weight. For 35 years, because I occupied a thin body for a little bit of it. Okay, so again, in the beginning, when I first started going to the doctor, because when I was 14, it was because I gained a bunch of weight. And the whole thing that was focused on was how do we get her to lose weight? What's wrong with her that she gained all this weight? With the assumption that if I just lost the weight, I would be healthy. And then, over the years, as my disease got worse, and my attempts at keeping myself healthy led to weight loss, anytime I went to the doctor, it was assumed that I was sick because I was underweight. I had so many doctors refuse to test me for anything, refuse to look at me, because it was, you just need to gain weight. You're just anorexic and you just need to eat more. You have a fear of food for no reason. It couldn't possibly be that you're literally in pain every single time you eat. And you just need to gain weight. I've experienced that. I've heard so many people who are in the obese category who had serious medical conditions that had nothing to do with their obesity, that were not given the care they deserved, that were not tested, that were not taken seriously, that got sicker and sicker and sicker with things that could have been avoided because doctors refused to look at them. They aren't allowed to be insured. They do not have access to safety. It is normal for people to not be able to get a job, to not be hired, so that they can provide for themselves, not based on their ability, not based on their actual intellect, not based on their personality, based on their body type. This is the world that we're living in. And this is what the real, true body positivity movement needs to be about. Liberation from the idea that anyone's body tells you something inherent about their worthiness as a human being. And the fact that we believe these things, see, okay, are you eating and gaining weight now? You still look thin. That is completely inappropriate. It is not okay to ask somebody that question. I know that you don't mean to hurt me. I know that that seems like a reasonable thing that we should be able to ask somebody. But it's not, because you don't know me. I literally said in the last video, I'm not going to be talking about this because this recovery process, from being chronically ill for 35 years and then just getting out of surgery, I am not in control of my body weight. This is the poison in our culture that we need to start to suck out. This idea that anyone can just eat more or eat less and it will change how your body looks. I have been trying so hard to eat more, and no, it hasn't equaled weight gain yet. Because my body is still healing, my body is still doing all these things. And having this operation and changing all of these things has completely changed how my body functions. I am not in control of my body weight. And I haven't been in control of my body weight my entire life. I understand. I'm 70 and I didn't mean to offend you. And this is what I'm trying to say. I have compassion for you because I understand that this is societally acceptable. We are trained in our society that it is okay to say these things to people. And that, again, this is a part of what I'm trying to speak to today. We have been trained to believe that everyone has perfect control over their body. That anyone can look how they're supposed to look. 4 weeks after having surgery from something they had for 35 years. That it is reasonable that we still look at that person and be like, well, you don't look normal and healthy yet, so what's wrong with you? You must not be doing what you should be doing. Right? There's an underlying assumption. You still look so thin. And again, we are trained that to say things like that is okay because we're coming from concern. But we're not coming from concern. We're coming from a cultural indoctrination that says if you don't look straight size, you're not healthy. And that is based on nothing. Right? Our obesity standards. If you look into the BMI, if you look into where these numbers came from, it's based on nothing. It's based on hot air. Like what we have determined to be what a healthy body is supposed to look like, generally speaking, isn't based in science, isn't based in fact, isn't based in anything that's actually helping you determine by looking at me whether I'm healthy or not. It is impossible to tell where someone is at on their health journey based on how they look. Like one example, there are thousands of people who absolutely qualify for the mental disorder of anorexia. Literally starving themselves, weight cycling over and over and over again, who are in a place of just chronic fear of food, hating their bodies, deeply, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and doing things to themselves physically that are harming their health. But they are in the obese category, so they don't get treatment, and they're not taken seriously. There are people who work out, who eat relatively healthy, who lived incredibly balanced lives, who are obese, who are overweight, who don't look societally acceptable, people who are chronically ill or disabled, who don't look how they're supposed to look, who are taking really good care of their health and are gonna live a long time. And there are people who look incredibly healthy. They're influencers. They have the perfect butt and the toned thighs and the flat abs, and they're bulimic and they're taking weight loss drugs and they're weight cycling, and they are going to have a heart attack. And no one judges the influencer. And everyone judges the chronically ill person or the obese person. When health, if that's what we're really looking at, the person who doesn't look good is far healthier than the person who we are deciding looks great. Because we can't tell by looking at somebody. And yet, we live in a world where we think that we can. And again, the person who's the influencer is going to be judged as a responsible, taking responsibility for themselves, intelligent, respectable person who, when they tell us to buy this supplement and they tell us to buy this outfit and they tell us to do this, we're going to trust them. We're going to follow them. We're going to assume that they have something, worthwhile to say, simply because they are genetically blessed to fit into a body that is societally accepted right now. Whereas the obese person, or the person who's not beautiful, or the person who is chronically ill, who's incredibly studied, who's incredibly intelligent, who's incredibly all of these things, is going to be discounted as lazy and wrong and not someone we should take seriously based on their body type. Taylor Swift was named Person of the Year. Are you kidding me? Yeah, great. She makes music. Okay, but she put on these massive concerts that are hugely wasteful, distraction at best. She flew around the world in a private jet, right, creating more pollution as a single person than like entire countries. And what? She made music. Great. Okay. There are scientists, there are people out there who are like changing the world, who are contributing to actual better outcomes for people's lives, who are not conventionally attractive, who are obese, who are disabled, who are just normal looking, that we are never going to hear about, we're never going to know about, and we don't care, and they won't be famous because of how they look. This is what I'm talking about. It is unacceptable that we still think we can tell somebody's health, someone's mental health, someone's intelligence based on their body. That is cultural conditioning. So like I say, I don't judge you for asking me that question because I know that that is rooted in a cultural propaganda that has been spewed on all of us for decades, centuries even, to profit people at the top. Literally, this whole thing exists because of money and power. It has nothing to do with people's health. It has nothing to do with facts in science. It has nothing to do with wanting people to actually be able to take responsibility for themselves. Because if it did, we would have completely different structures. We would have a society that prioritizes green spaces in every neighborhood. We would have a society that prioritizes adequate time off for rest and relaxation so that we can take care of ourselves. We would have a system that prioritizes equal distribution of healthy food that is affordable, that we would be subsidizing healthy food. We would be subsidizing the things that are actually nutrient dense instead of subsidizing processed food and subsidizing meat and dairy so that these giant corporations can profit off of people's ill health and lack of access. We would be prioritizing community care. We would be prioritizing access to healthcare for everybody. We would be prioritizing making it more accessible, not less accessible. We don't live in that world. This isn't about health. This has never been about health. This has always been about how do we profit the corporations the most. So this is what we need to understand. When we are participating in stigma and when we are participating in the entire system that tells us that it is okay to judge people based on how they look, to say that they are either healthy or unhealthy, and therefore worthy or unworthy, we are participating in a system that is all about profiting large corporations. That's it. That's what it boils down to. That's what it's always been about. That is what we are being indoctrinated into constantly when we are being made to be afraid of occupying a body that isn't straight-sized, of occupying a body that isn't productive, of being able to judge someone else's body and say, you are inherently unworthy, or you must not be taking responsibility for yourself, or you must not be making the right choices because you still don't look how you're supposed to look. And I want to ask, where did you even get that definition of what someone is supposed to look like? How do you know what someone's healing journey is going to look like? How do you know what someone's natural set point is? How do you know what someone's habits are based on looking at them? You don't. Right? Like, again, I can speak from personal experience. For the last 20 years, I have worked harder than any person I have ever known to try to be healthy. And I've never once looked the part. I am healthier in habit than anybody I've ever met. But because of my condition, I am not in control of my weight. I am not in control of how my body looks. And there were so many things that were outside of my control based on the fact that my organs literally didn't function, that there was nothing I could do about it. And people just assumed I had an eating disorder, and people just assumed I was just making bad choices and being irresponsible. Because they've been conditioned to think that. They've been conditioned to see it that way. And it comes deeper than that, right? That we've all been trained to fear our bodies. We've all been trained to do things to our bodies to augment how they look instead of living for how things feel. And this is the big thing that I'm constantly trying to teach on the self-love path, in my mystery school, in my coaching with me, that we need to let go of living for how things look. Because this is what's killing us. Living for how things look and living for how things should be is the reason we are so disconnected from our humanity to the point where these corporations can control us the way that they do. We are not living for how things are. We are not living for how things feel. The only reason I am still alive today is because 12 years ago, I made a deal with myself that I was never going to try to alter my body weight ever again. That I was going to accept whatever weight I was at based on doing the things that felt good in my body. That was the goal. How do I learn about what this body needs in order to feel good, in order to function, in order to have energy that I can have, in order for my organs to function the best that they can? And I literally became the fish who learned how to climb a tree. Like I said, by the time I got diagnosed, I should have been dead. The thing that I had, superior mesenteric artery syndrome, where my small intestine was literally smashed in between two arteries. So food could not travel through my body, and I had no peristalsis, therefore no movement in my colon, therefore no capacity to really detoxify, which led to mast cell activation syndrome, which led to chronic gut infections. I was able to be nutritionally filled up enough and healthy enough that all of my other organs were still functioning to the point of being able to go straight in for surgery and go home a day early. When most people in my state would have been close to death, would have needed to be refed, would have had organs shutting down because of lack of nutrition, because you literally can't get it in and you can't move it through and you're allergic to it. And I did that because I was not concerned about my body weight. Because I couldn't be. I wasn't in control of it. I couldn't do anything about it. So for a while, I was overweight. And then for a while, I was underweight. And I had to do what I had to do so that I could function. And that's what saved my life. Living for how things felt versus how they looked. And knowing I didn't have control. I didn't have control. And that this wellness culture that tells us, again, that to fit into our cultural narrative of what it looks like right now to be healthy. Because again, remember this. What we deem as healthy changes based on trends, based on corporations selling us shit. Right? This movement of strong is the new skinny. So you're not supposed to be skinny anymore. Now it's all about being muscular and toned and fit. We are all being fooled into thinking this is a body positivity movement. It isn't. It's a new way of you need to micromanage your macronutrients, your workouts, your way of being in order to fit in to a societal standard of what health looks like, which may not be healthy for you. It could be a total obsession. Someone can look amazing, be an influencer, and their entire world revolves around their eating schedule, their workout schedule, their supplements. And we say that's healthy. They're literally spending their entire lives working to control their body. And we deem that as healthy. That is not healthy. That is not reasonable. We need to take a step back and realize that these people we are idolizing are not healthy. It is not mentally healthy, but it's normal. It's societally seen as acceptable to live your life like that. So long as the outcome is you fit into what corporations can then say, okay, now you're an influencer, you fit into the cultural standard, you can be a salesperson for our supplement. You can be a salesperson for our clothes. You can be a salesperson. Who's profiting off of this? Corporations. We are being indoctrinated that it is okay to be completely obsessed with your body. That is a reasonable way of life so that you can then be someone who sells shit for corporations because people want to look like you. Because we have been trained that if I look like that person, my life is going to be like that person's life, which is free and liberated. And look at how much fun I'm having all day because I don't have to work a normal job, right? And it all comes down to we hate living in the system. We hate our 9 to 5. We hate that the way that life is set up, working for these huge corporations is inhumane and horrible. And we're disconnected from community, and we're disconnected from our bodies, and we're disconnected from each other. And then we're trained that the way out of that is to make healthy choices, to go get a side hustle, to become someone that a corporation can sponsor, and that's the solution. Like, right? Are we seeing this? Are we seeing how deeply out of alignment with reality this whole thing is? How much of a distraction this whole thing is from the actual systems we are living in. And the fact that there are people who occupy different, right? You are a different race. You come from a different culture. You come from a different background. And your body can be judged, so you don't have safety, you don't have access. And that is normal. Your body is bigger than straight size. You can't buy clothes. You can't go to the doctor. You can't get health insurance. You live in a certain part of the country where there isn't access to healthy food and green spaces and work that's reasonable, where you can make a reasonable wage, education, and you're blamed for it. And everyone else is just afraid to become you, instead of looking at why do you have so much less access to things than everyone else. It's just the systems aren't fair. Okay, so again, is this to say that we have no control over our health? Of course not. I'm a living example. But just because you're taking care of your health doesn't mean you're going to look how you're supposed to look. And we need to accept that as a culture. And number 2, not everyone has the same access. Not everyone has the same privilege. Not everyone has the same amount of choice as everyone else. It's not just that every obese person is making bad choices. It's not that every obese person is going to have a heart attack or get diabetes. These things are myths. So now, do you deserve to be able to look in the mirror and see that you have a few belly rolls and be able to love yourself even though you're straight size? Yes. Okay, I am not saying that the body positivity movement can't include people who are societally okay. Like, you're maybe a little insecure, but you're still going to have access to healthcare. You're still going to have access to work. You're still going to have access to safety, even though you have a few belly rolls. You can still hate yourself to such a degree that your entire life is being robbed from you because of that. And I don't want to take that away from you. That experience counts. That experience matters. It is not your fault. It is culture. And you deserve to be able to love yourself, no matter how you look. And I am so sorry that culture has indoctrinated you to believe that if you are not as thin as possible, or if you're not as muscular as possible, or if you're not toned, or if you're not right, straight size, beautiful, tanned, shiny skin, thick hair, big eyes, thick lips, that there's something inherently wrong with you and that you need to work on that. I am so sorry that that message was given to you. That is from evil, selfish corporations who have a vested interest in you navel-gazing at yourself to that degree that you are distracted from how totally messed up our systems are. You are inherently worthy of love, safety, and provision, no matter how you look. And that is true, but that is not what we experience in our society. And I am so sorry for everyone who's experienced that. That's why I have so much work, again, in my mystery school and in one-on-one coaching that says we are never going to work on weight loss. We are never going to work on making your body look a certain way. It's never about that. It's always about how do you feel? What serves you within the capacity that you have and the body you have. And learning to accept that it's going to look how it's going to look. And it's shitty that we live in a world that does not make that okay. And then bigger than that, looking at the systems that have taught us that it is okay for certain body types to be made literally unsafe, to be judged as less, based on nothing, because it profits corporations for that to happen. That's what we're looking at. That's what this is about. It's not about anybody's health. When you look at me, you cannot tell. You have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea what I'm doing with my body. I have no idea what my body's going to look like over the next couple of years as I recover from this. I'm not in control. Right? So it's been 10 years of everyone thinking I had an eating disorder. Turns out, no, I didn't. And now I'm going to recover, and people are going to judge me that I'm not recovering fast enough and that I still look thin. And if I gain a whole bunch of weight, they're going to be, well, now what are you doing? Now you're making a whole bunch of bad choices because you're overweight. Right? You can't win. So we have to give up because it's arbitrary. It's based on nothing. It's not about people's health. We need to realize every single time we ask someone, are you really healthy? Are you really taking care of yourself? We need to think, what corporation just profited from me thinking that? Because that's what it boils down to. What shitty system just profited from me thinking that? Because that's where it comes from. So true body positivity is about liberation from these corporate systems that have us be at war with our bodies and at war with each other. Instead of looking at the systems for how they are and how toxic they are and how they're making us prioritize things that have nothing to do with health and nothing to do with our wellness and everything to do with their profit. So we can start to be the people who demand a better system. This is not about people's health. If it was, we'd have a totally different system that prioritized totally different things. And we can be about that. But we have to deprogram ourselves. Right? That's what the whole mystery school is about. Deprogramming ourselves from these corporate ideas that we have been trained to believe are reality. Because it's not reality. We have to stop hating ourselves. We have to stop judging each other based on how we look. It's not working for us. It's keeping us trapped in these systems that only cause harm. That's what this is about. Okay? So again, I have nothing but compassion for everyone who has judged me over the years, who still ask me these questions, because I understand it's not really coming from you. This is corporations having convinced you that these are okay things. But they're not. It's not about health. You're not really concerned with my health. And we need to unpack this stuff in ourselves. We need to do this work. Because people who are being disenfranchised by the system need us to do this work. Okay? Okay. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. This was a big one. Please go watch Mickey's video. Go look at her list of resources. Like, really study this stuff. Study where these things came from. It's so important that we break ourselves out of this so that we can actually create a body positivity movement where we are working towards safety for everyone, regardless of their health status. Because health, so much of the time, is something we have no control over. Our size is something we have no control over. And it has nothing to do with our worthiness as a human being. And that's what we need to deprogram ourselves about and reprogram ourselves about. Okay? Okay. Thank you. You are worthy of loving your body no matter how it looks. You are worthy of safety no matter how you look. And that's the world we want to build. Corporations should not be able to dictate how you feel about yourself. That's the movement. Okay. See you next week.